you want to set them up for financial success, set them up in understanding that sometimes it's better not to have the things that they think that they want in order to have more choices.
Exactly. And I think it's going back to what Missy was saying, like, even as when they're young, like, and they're, in that 7-8 range where it's like, ooh, I really want that toy or those kinds of things. And it's like, encourage them to save for it. Where it's like, okay, well, if you want it so bad, then like, let's save for it.
Welcome to a Wiser Retirement Podcast, where we believe the best financial advice should always be conflict-free. I'm your host, Casey Smith. Today, I'm joined with Missie Beach, the world's best financial planner, also called Senior Financial Advisor, and Michaela Dowdy, the future of Wiser Wealth Management, also a financial planning associate here at our firm. And today we're going to talk about how to set your children up for financial success. I'm really interested to listen to this podcast because I would like to know this myself.
Yeah, me too. Casey and I are still trying.
Right. Oh my goodness. One of my first articles ever published in the AJC was about teaching your kids about money. And I will say that I tried really hard to maintain everything that I suggested in the article. I think it's just tough this day and age to teach kids almost anything, just because we run so fast in so many different directions. And when I was a kid, I felt like it was so easy, at least for me, because, you went out and got a job and you worked, or you just did something. I mean, I mowed yards and got money. I did things, got money. But today there's travel baseball, there's travel soccer, there's, and you pretty much run 100 miles an hour from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. And maybe that's why there's such a shortage of young workers at pizza places and Chick-fil-A's and everything else, because we're all just busy running around doing Johnny's going to be in the MLB.
Yeah, they're overscheduled. It's not like they have idle time for part-time jobs anymore.
Yeah.
Between high-achieving scholars and athletes, where's time for part-time work?
So, we can't fix that problem. We can fix a lot of things here at Wiser Wealth, but not that. So let's just kind of dive into the theory here and what we need to be focused on. I mean, I shared with you guys over lunch yesterday that, I have one about to go to college who his job has been to be good at golf. And he got good enough to get a full D1 scholarship to Mississippi State. So good for him. Did his job.
Check
right?
that box.
But he's in a situation now where he wants more money. And, I was surprised. I was surprised when I was at the dinner table. I'm like, okay, where is he? And I text him and he's like, I'm working. And I'm like, you're working? What do you mean you're working? And he's like, I got a job at DoorDash. So my son's out delivering meals when it gets dark after golf for money. And of course my financial mind, my parental mind went off first. I was like, okay, that could be a dangerous job, and unnecessarily dangerous job. And then my mind went to money, of course. And I'm like, wait a minute, I pay for that car. Right? You're exchanging car for, it's like the Uber drivers. I mean, it's great service, but they're just extracting cash out of their car. There's no way you actually make money doing that.
They don't think that way. Nope.
And so this is like a whole text exchange. And I was like, well, first of all, you should be talking to one of us before you just take jobs. Two, you should do some math.
Mm-hmm.
So, how much do tires cost? What's the cost per mile to drive your vehicle? That would be the first place I would go. No, I probably know 18-year-old's going to go and figure that out.
Did you talk about IRS mileage reimbursement rate?
You could yeah, that's true. You could start there and not even have to go calculate your car. I think a Ford F-150 is probably a little more expensive than most vehicles, though.
Guzzling.
Probably exceed the
dollar a mile.
The IRS ruling on that. They're probably doing it with a Prius. So yeah, we will have that conversation shortly. I'll have to report back, but this week this will be the conversation of like, this is not a good idea. We're going to do something else. But probably need to set up some type of an allowance. And, I go on message boards like on Reddit and places like that and looking to see what other parents are giving their college kids. And I was shocked. It was very little. I was like, whoa, that's $250 a month. Doesn't go very far. I guess if you're on the meal plan, maybe it goes a little further.
Oh yeah. If you're on the meal plan, $250 is fine.
Yeah. I guess most of them are probably meal plan.
Yeah. Because most of the time for most colleges, you're required to have it for at least the first year or two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
when you live on campus, you have to have a meal plan.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's start at the very beginning. Let's assume we have little children.
Oh, all right. Well, I remember when mine were little at the grocery store, you go through the checkout line and they always want something.
That's right.
And you just tell them no.
Yeah.
Otherwise, every time you go through a checkout line, you're going to be buying something.
I do remember that phase. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yes.
and they do it on purpose. They put all the candy and stuff like that right there at kid level,
Right. So when they were really young, I think we gave them $10 or something. Not very often, but that was like their money. And so that kind of eliminated that.
Oh, you did. So you, but like when they're 1 and
Not
2
when they're 1,
and 3.
No, that's just, they just hate parents at that store. So.
That's funny.
Yeah. All right. So let's say start financial education early.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. When they are toddlers,
delayed gratification.
Delayed gratification. Don't
Yeah.
just sure, little junior, have a
Just give them whatever they want.
Hershey bar every time.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think our house, things just piled up and you look around and you're like, these kids have way too much stuff. And it just became, you only get things when it's your birthday or Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Or if grandparents want to spoil you. But outside of that, yeah, we're not buying.
No.
Not,
Or
Yeah.
your birthday's coming up or Christmas is coming up. Let's decide what we're going to get rid of and give to kids who don't have things. And
Right.
so
Yes.
let's pare down.
right. Not the broken stuff, the nicer stuff. Yeah.
The things that still
my kids
work.
always gravitate to the broken stuff. I'm like, nobody wants your broken toy.
We're going to throw those away.
Right.
Yes. Quarterly clean out.
So yeah, so that'd be an example of delayed gratification. Saying, no, we're not going to buy this now. And add it to your list.
Yes, the list. Oh, my boys would hate the list.
See, I was always put in charge of the list. And my parents, for grocery shopping, it was always I got to write down the list and help build the list. And then for when I was growing up, it was because I grew up in the middle of 08, 09, credit crisis, everything. So finance was top of mind for everyone then and was all over the news and you couldn't escape it if you wanted to. And so it was very evident when we would just go to the grocery that it was we're only going to spend $100 or $150, whatever amount it needed to be. And it was always just a game for me and my mom. It'd be okay, we're going to get some coupons. We're going to clip those. And then we get up to the register and I'd be like, are we going to do it? Are we going to do it? And it was just a game. For me.
Watching the coupons come off.
Yes. And then it was also just watching it go up the whole time. And you're we're getting close. We're getting close. So people thought we were crazy, but that's okay. So it just became very much a ingrained part of you budget your life and budget it in a way of the things that you can definitely control, grocery shopping. You can majority control. Granted, I mean right now inflation's insane, but for the most part you can control how much you're spending at the grocery store. And so that was just a really small way that I got to see from an age of 7 and 8 okay, this is how money should be going out of the house, is you're actually thinking intentionally about what you're putting in the cart. You're not just grabbing the best name brand option because it's the best name brand option. And so granted, you have to be careful with that because I did have the story with I freaked out that we went over budget. So then the people behind us thought that it was oh no, they're in dire need.
That's all they have.
No.
And my mom had to turn around and be like, no. She just knows the budget. I'm so sorry.
They were going to hand you a 20.
Yeah,
Trying to pay for your groceries or something?
Yes, they tried
Lord.
to pay the difference for my mom's groceries. And my mom was like, that is so kind, but we don't need that.
In context, your mom's a successful financial advisor.
Yes.
But
Oh
I
my
love it
gosh.
that your
That's so
mom.
embarrassing.
Yeah. But it's so nice that your mom turned it into a game, you know? So it wasn't like budgeting is a bad thing and, you know, like this death sentence. Most people think of budget as like, oh, you know, a really negative connotation. But like for you
Yeah.
all, it
Yeah.
was this game and like, oh, we got to stick to this number. How can we do it? And then,
Yes.
oh, with the help of coupons, like I could bring the total down. So
Well, I think it's having a childlike perspective to finances because it's like when you're a kid, you don't know anything about finances. Like money is just this thing that you see getting spent for goods and all of that. And so they don't understand like fully when you're young that like, oh, there can be stress with money. Not yet. And so it's one of those things that really you get to kind of shape, like you could shape it into a game, you know, and it can very easily turn into that because they don't know budget, and budgeting can be literally a game to them. Like, oh, we have the budget game.
kids love games.
I'm sorry. I'm still stuck on that story. That's crazy. So, you know, I think the next part is just, you just touched on it, is leading by example. So it's just doing things that, you know, they're watching, they're learning by watching. That's not just true with money. It's true with everything. Relationships, they watch parents and learn how to interact with relationships, you know? So we, you know, I feel like the world's more open now. People tend to say more things about money to their children than maybe prior generations, for sure, especially 2 generations ago.
But
We've
not
never
all
talked about it.
families.
But that's true, but not all families.
Some families it's still taboo for some reason.
Interesting.
Because we have some clients that come in and they're like, yeah, my kids don't know anything. They don't need to know. And I'm like, but they do need to have a general sense of where you stand
those are
and how
adult
it
children,
works.
though, and about your finances. I'm thinking about little kids now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But I think the big thing is how do we get our children to understand the negative impacts of debt? Because we have over $1 trillion in debt right now on credit cards. That's just the credit cards.
Wow.
It's individual consumer debt, it's highest it's ever been. So how do we teach our kids to be responsible with money in a world where on social media everyone is buying this or has this or has that, and everything just looks like it's just easy. You know, that's one thing that I don't know if I have regrets yet with my children as far as money goes, but they live a totally different lifestyle than I did. And sometimes I don't know that they don't understand it. They have no capacity to understand it.
Yeah.
You know?
Exactly. I remember when my kids were little, and I forget which one of them, we were at the store and they wanted something. And I'm like, no, you just don't need it right now. You know, I just don't need to buy that right now for you. And they're like, well, just use your credit card. And I'm like, that's, you know, not free money. I said, and then we had the credit card talk and to explain, like, sure, I could swipe my credit card, but that's just like handing over a wad of dollar bills.
Right.
And so they didn't realize in their little heads at that time, like a credit card is real money. You know, there's a tangible aspect to the credit card versus just swiping it and taking the item. You know, kids are like, oh, sure, just swipe your card.
Right.
No big deal. And so we had to sit there and talk about, like, no, it's just like I handed out, you know, all the cash in my wallet for whatever that toy was at that time. And they're like, all right, fine. You know, another money lesson by mom. Oh.
They'll appreciate that eventually.
Yes.
So Dave Ramsey had a pretty neat concept. We have the jar system. Of course, you know, Dave loves his jars and his envelopes, but you have save, give, spend. Right. So we did that for a little while. It's just, first of all, no one has cash anymore. So that I found that to be very frustrating. There's a more modern day version of that with the green light card, nothing to do with Dave Ramsey, but the green light card. I did a couple of reviews of that a long time ago for our YouTube channel, but that's what we're using currently with the younger two. So they can, if they do a chore or if there's something that we say, hey, do this, and they can, once they check it off, you get an alert that they've done the whatever it is, and then you can transfer money into their Greenlight card. It's annoying because you can't deposit money directly into it. It has to kind of flow through the parent account. So at Christmas time or birthdays, you had to collect all the cash. You had to deposit in your bank, and then you had to go transfer it into the Greenlight card. But they can, they have a spot where they can give. They have a spot where they can save. You can set saving limitations or spending limitations. So if they're going to go buy Fortnite skins, you can make sure you turn off gaming purchases, things like that. And then they have an investing component to it.
Oh, wow.
So it's like a little mini brokerage, and they can almost buy anything there. For our kids, I'm like, you just need to buy VOO, the S&P 500.
Yeah.
And of course, when do we buy it? At the height of the market before the crash.
As it would happen.
Good lesson.
And of course, they were like, we didn't make any money on that investment. It's like, it's a long-term focus.
Long-term play, kids. Long-term play.
But now with our older one, at the credit union, they allow you to get your own checking account when you're 18.
Yes.
Some credit unions, I think, are 16, or banks, but we had to wait till 18. So now he has our Flight Path program for investing, and then he has the a normal debit card. So it feels like a big boy now.
Yeah, off the kid account.
Off the kid account, exactly. So that's, I think those are ways that you can budget and lead by example, and to kind of mimic that. And then whatever device they have, whether it be an iPad or an iPhone, on the Greenlight card, they have a login, and then they can see everything. So they can see what money's in there. I did find in a few cases that like the Greenlight card just wouldn't work online, because it's a debit card, and I'm sure it comes across kind of funny to the merchant.
Probably.
Yeah,
it's probably like some sort of prepaid almost in a way.
Ironically, we had the most trouble with Amazon with it.
That's so
interesting.
Weird.
Yeah, but anyway, that's an idea if you want to start a system, is using the Greenlight card.
And I think like how Missy was saying, like the differentiation between needs and wants is something like kids can so quickly understand too, of like, oh, this is a need and this is a want. And like, as far as like credit cards went, like it was something when I was growing up, it was like credit cards were not something that was used as frequently unless because the point system was not as lavish as it is now.
The rewards.
Yes.
Right.
And so like it was really only used when they were, like paying for bigger purchases to get points. And my parents were like, we're using credit cards to get points. So we get rewards back.
Yeah.
And then it was like debit cards were used for everything else, and understanding that, you don't really want to put anything on credit. And like when we would buy phones, my parents were pretty like confident, or as long as you could get the deal, because, now they want to say that you can't pay it all up front or you don't get the deal, all that. But it was always paying it down and making sure you could get the deal as best as you could, and just kind of doing the negotiating hacks and everything. And so definitely like credit was not seen as the best as far as, like use it in emergencies. And that's what I had a credit card for, was like only emergencies only. Like your debit card's used for everything else. I remember one time when I literally went to the gas pump at 16, was not checking my account as frequently as I should have been. And it literally like ran my account to zero. And I got a call from my dad being like, what are you doing? Have you checked your bank account lately? And I'm like, no, what's wrong? And he's like, oh, well, you ran your bank account to literally zero. And it's like, oh,
whoops.
Thanks.
Okay.
But thankfully it stopped. Like it stopped at the pump. It didn't keep going. So I didn't overdraft. I don't know how that worked. But
you must have had exactly $100 left.
Yeah. Hey, but that was back when I could fill up my car for like $20. It was nice. Back when it was $1, like 20 for gas.
Wow. Back in the day.
Are you curious why annuities keep coming up as a potential investment option? People are often told that annuities can effectively mitigate investment risks and help secure their financial future. However, annuities often benefit the salesperson and might not be the best choice for you as a consumer. To learn more about the various types of annuities, the negatives of owning them, and better investment alternatives, we have a free ebook on our website just for you. To download our ebook, Buyer Beware, Why Do They Keep Trying to Sell You That Annuity? Simply click the link in the episode notes or visit wiserinvestor.com/guides. Now let's get back to the episode.
So that part is, so here you got to have some type of a budget system that they understand and delayed gratification. So we've talked about that. Another thing is, teaching them about investing. Obviously, we know a thing or two about investing. One of the things that I get frustrated with is individual stock investing. Oh. So it's like understanding how stock works, I think, is important. But usually in high school, they have the stock game. They do that in finance school, major. They have the stock picking game. Usually one or two professors will do it.
Or the stock club.
Or the stock club. Yes, the stock club.
Investing club.
I just don't think that that's successful. That's not really teaching them about investing.
Oh, I agree. It's a pet peeve of mine.
It's almost negative learning, really. And so really what you want them to do, like, okay, so secret hack here. Buy the S&P 500, right? And then lose the password to your brokerage account for like 20 years and you'll be just fine.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, that's the secret to building investing. And when you get significant wealth, then when it builds up to be a big number, that's when you call us and we work on diversification. But up until that point for these young people, you just buy the S&P 500 and just let it run.
Yeah.
That's
so
it.
Go on YouTube, watch a video about what an ETF is. So they
Right.
understand what, buying the S&P 500 means.
Yeah.
And so they understand what that diversification is doing for them and why
Right.
they're not buying single stocks. There's a ton of videos out there. I looked last night. And so you just have to have them understand why they're doing that and why buying NVIDIA is not a good idea. And that's so hard right now. Because
Unless you bought it at $130.
Yeah. And you didn't. You didn't. You missed the boat. So you can't buy it today and have that appreciation because that ship sailed. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, I do get it. I mean, I had a college roommate that bought a lot of Cisco stock back in the 90s. And that was like the NVIDIA of his time. And I think he got a down payment on his house and bought his engagement ring with it. And he still had money left over.
But then there's probably some other guy on the hall that didn't bought something else.
There's somebody else down the hall. You're right.
Tanked.
That probably lost a lot of money, but and it's soured and never invested again. Right.
Yeah.
That's how that goes.
And he didn't tell anybody about it.
No,
that's the thing. You only hear from the people that have the great success stories. You're not hearing from the guy who lost his shirt.
Right.
And so that's what people forget. They just anchor on all these success stories. Like so-and-so bought XYZ stock and they made a bundle.
Right.
So I need to jump on. And well.
Yeah. S&P 500, lose your password.
Love it.
That's all you got to do. Setting financial goals. So having a savings goal, I will say with my kids, I haven't really set financial goals with them. I think we do more of their sport or, what they're after. I mean, obviously grades have got to be maintained, but for Ethan, it was chasing a certain ranking for a while. For Caitlin, it's moving up in the ranks to jump at a certain level. She's an equestrian rider. And then there's a plan which gets reversed, when we have whole goal setting podcasts, if you're interested in how to set goals, our kids have used this format and they've achieved it every year or have put forth the effort for sure. But I think that, it's important to set a goal because sometimes you fail and it allows you to reset and then go, okay, how can I look at this differently? Just because I was trying to explain this to someone recently, it's like, just because you work hard doesn't mean you're guaranteed success. There's a lot of hardworking people who aren't successful. And so you have to understand how much traction you're getting with that hard work and what can you do differently. And so you can take that a lot of different angles, but from a money standpoint, maybe you keep struggling with credit card debt. There's young people out there that carry a lot of credit card debt. And so maybe at some point the sky miles or whatever miles you're trying to get just aren't worth it, because in the end it'd been cheaper just to buy the ticket.
Oh, absolutely.
After what you paid in interest.
Definitely.
Right. So you just don't want them, you don't want your kids to end up in a life of slavery. And slavery, and I think in modern day today is you're being suppressed by the financial institutions that you took money from, that now have to make payments to, and you can't change your life because of it. You can't leave a bad relationship because you're stuck paying all these bills. You can't change jobs because you bought that car and it was too expensive, right? Because you can't afford to be out of work.
Yep.
So you want to set them up for financial success, set them up in understanding that sometimes it's better not to have the things that they think that they want in order to have more choices.
Exactly. And I think it's going back to what Missy was saying, like, even as when they're young, like, and they're, in that 7-8 range where it's like, ooh, I really want that toy or those kinds of things. And it's like, encourage them to save for it. Where it's like, okay, well, if you want it so bad, then like, let's save for it. And then it's, when they're doing the chores and they're doing all the things and it's going in like their jar of, okay, here's all my money that I can go and buy my very own iPod Touch, and that was my goal when I was little. And so it's like getting them in that saving mindset. And then once they've done that, they get the reward of like, oh my gosh, like I will forever hold pride over the fact that I bought my first iPod Touch myself,
right.
Yeah. And that's something so dumb. Like, it's I was cool. 9 and I think that I'm like, yeah, I did.
Because then you can have, you can have fun counting that money along the way. Like when they're little kids, when they're like 8, you get out that jar like every week or so with them and you count the money, and it helps with their like coin skills and all that.
A clear jar so they can see it as it grows.
So gratifying.
The pottery piggy banks don't work very well because you can't see it. Can't see what's in it, but a clear jar is how you save.
That's what I had. I had a little clear jar and it had my name on it.
With hearts.
Going back, we kind of started on the allowance side. Going back to the allowance side, Dave talks about don't give them allowance, give them a commission. So make them do chores in order to earn money. That's difficult to execute. If you're a working family, 2 husband and wife working, that's a tough one because someone's got to manage. Someone's got to be the bank. It's like Monopoly. Someone's got to be the bank, right? And so if you're the bank and the player, that's a lot of extra work. So you want to stay on top of that. I think most families give an allowance, and the counter to that is commission's a little bit like, hey, I got to do things or I have to find things to do to earn money. That's a little entrepreneurial component to it, where the allowance is probably looked at more from an employee standpoint of like, well, I work here. I'm a part of the family. I have these chores I have to do because I'm part of the family, but I'm part of the entity, and then I'm getting a paycheck. So that's more of like an employee kind of mindset where you're not having to get creative. So, I end up like my son delivering DoorDash to random people throughout the county. So those are 2 different ways. You can do it either way. But I think the important thing is that we're not just giving money. I had an idea recently is like, okay, what if there's an allowance? You're responsible for being good at this craft because that's what got you to school. But you have to give me 5 hours of volunteer time every single month. Like you have to find 5 hours to volunteer your time to help others.
Yeah,
that's good, but how are they going to find that? A college freshman's not going to be able to find that time. Well,
even a high schooler, that a lot of the opportunities are during school hours.
True.
I've noticed that like at our school, the higher, the kids who take the AP classes and the really high classes, they all have required volunteer hours, but people in the core group aren't required to have volunteer hours, which I thought was
That's
a
interesting.
little different. But
Yeah.
I know that's important on college resumes now is volunteer hours.
Oh, absolutely.
I think just being a part of clubs though too, because I think high schoolers, I don't know, like looking back on time in high school, it's like somehow your energy is infinite at that age.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, like I was leaving the house at 6 o'clock and I wasn't coming back until 9, 10 o'clock, you know, I was like, curfew, I'm here, you know? And so like, I think it's something that you find the time. And I know like I was a part of a lot of different clubs that all required, I'd have over like 40 hours of service every year on top of doing golf because I was pursuing college and collegiate golf at that time. And then, schoolwork and all of that. So it's finding that balance, but I think it's setting them up for like time management that's beyond like just themselves. And like, cause volunteer hours are something that they're not doing for themselves. They're doing for someone else.
Right.
Whereas like sports, you're focused on your individual skill and that's so individually focused that it's like, I have to be me and the best I can be, which is so good. But you also have to have the balance of like, there's another world out here. And it's like when you're in like the privileged stance that a lot of the clients that we have are and their kids, and it's a tough conversation for money because money isn't necessarily a problem and it's not a nail biter issue, that it's one of those where it's like, you almost have to give them a little exposure to like, there's a world out here where this is not the case. And you are so privileged and so blessed to be where you're at. And I think that helps put money into perspective at that point. Because it's like, oh, money doesn't just grow on trees. You know, it really is something that, you know, mom and dad had to work really hard for this because I'm seeing that there are other families that are struggling. And especially in the circles and especially in Atlanta, because Atlanta's hard because it's a lot of like private schools. And so you get into like your own little bubble.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that because then kids are sheltered and all of that, but also just giving them another dynamic. And so I think that's a great idea to have hours, all that to say.
Yeah. Well, I push back on the sheltered part. I mean, from some things, yes. From gang shootings, probably.
Probably, yeah.
But yeah, but even in private schools, you know, we struggle with, because with that privilege comes other issues.
No, definitely.
We have parents at our school that willingly serve underage kids alcohol as long as they drink it in their house and don't drive anywhere. I'm like, what is wrong with you people? You know? So we fight other things.
No, definitely.
Not just I don't think anybody's gonna die, but you know,
different issues.
Don't get me started. That's a whole different different podcast. I still maintain that the best teachers are in public schools. But in some of the worst environments. But I will say this, because I live in the city of Marietta and you're in the city of Atlanta, Missy. So, you know, our public school choices are very different than people who live in Cherokee County or even East Cobb, where the public schools are almost like private schools. So it's all about where you live.
Yeah.
Not, you know, for me to make that statement, you have to understand where I'm coming from in my situation, Missy's situation. Where if I lived further north, we probably wouldn't need that be in a private school.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about college and career planning as they get older. That's tough. You know, I mean, man, for my oldest, I don't know that he'll be a PGA golfer. If he's going to kick it into high gear, this is his opportunity. So he's going to have the opportunity to do that. But he's a good people person. He's a good networker. Not too worried about him. I think he'll turn out just fine. It's painful to be watched. You know, he comes from school of hard knocks like his dad. So it'll be painful to watch a few little mistakes probably here and there. But yeah, I mean, when kids are real little, they want to play baseball. They want to be golfers. They want to be in the NFL or pro basketball, you know, or now I guess it's for kids like my 12-year-old, you know, I want to be YouTube famous or
I know. But
that's just tough.
They start
my
figuring
thing is,
it out.
yeah, my thing is like,
themselves.
let them dream.
Yeah.
Let them think that there are no limits. And as they get older, they might go, okay, well, maybe being an astronaut is not what I exactly wanted it to be. But, you know.
And I think once they get to the college level, they start to kind of find their way. Like my oldest is a junior now, and he knew going into college he wanted to do something in the business realm, but he didn't know what. So he started off as a double major in finance and business analytics. But then as he went through it, he realized, oh, well, I could get my master's in business analytics in 4 years. And so he changed paths and dropped the double major and realized, okay, I'm just going to get my master's in 4 years and be done. And then maybe I'll go back and get my MBA later at some point. But hey, I could get my master's and be done with it much faster. And so I'll do that. And so that's what he's doing. So, but he came to that on his own realization, just working with his advisor, and, we stayed out of it.
You figured it out. And for us, obviously, he figured out he liked the subject matter at hand.
I guess so. Even though I don't know what he does or what he'll do, he'll figure that out.
Yeah, I just they will figure it out. You just have to. I just don't want them to think that there's any limitations.
Right. Yeah, that's just it. It's fine to change your mind.
Yeah,
but let's not drag out college for 8 years while you figure out your mind.
And it's also like so important to understand like if it's a good investment for whatever profession you're going into. Like you don't need to be going to an $80,000 a year school to go and do a job where you're going to average, $60,000 a year.
You don't need to go to Duke. You don't need to go to Duke if you're going to be a minister.
Yes, exactly.
They have a great divinity school though.
But is it worth $150,000 in debt?
And that's where you have to look at like the ROI of like, could you not get the exact same education? Maybe not exact because the professors are going to be different, but at least at the end of the day, it matters about the paper, and it does matter that you have a great education, but really like looking at the overarching view of like, okay, can you get a finance degree,
at Georgia
on
the Hope or Zell?
Or do you need to go to USC and UCLA? Like, do you really need that experience? So I think it's weighing out those options and really figuring out, because there are times where it's, more beneficial to go to a more expensive school and you've gotten a lot of scholarship and it's a great community and it's going to build you holistically. And there are arguments for that, but also weighing out the, 40, 50 grand a year versus the 10 grand a year.
Sometimes I wonder about even physicians. We've met with several recently that are carrying over $500,000 in debt. And you're just kind of like, wow, could you have done that? Could you have done that cheaper? There had to have been a way to do that cheaper.
Can they though? I don't know.
I don't know. But I just $500,000.
Yeah, it's hard.
And a general practitioner is making like $150,000 a year.
Yeah.
That just doesn't, to me, the ROI on that, because it costs $150,000 a year to live right now. So I can't.
Well, and that's where I think you're getting all of the education reform and all of that, where they're like, you need to start, giving when the tuition is set for a business major, an art major, those need to coincide with what they're actually going to be making in the future.
That's the whole thing. They should start charging to different levels of tuition based on the major. So if you go to school and you're an art major, then maybe you're paying, I think art major, it could be different. SCAD has so many different levels. So maybe that's a bad example, but let's say history major, because I've always wondered what you did with that. A history major is something that I feel like that you have to go get your master's and you're going to go teach, or you could be, maybe you could be history undergrad and then go into law.
That's what a lot of people do. If you don't have a true law program or poli-sci.
But if you just left undergrad with a history degree, I don't know what you're going to do. And so my or the concept here is that degree would be less than maybe a finance degree. You pay more for the finance degree because the ROI on that should be higher if you stick to the goal. But that's being kind of modeled and talked about. Even some of these smaller schools, maybe we should charge more for different programs. Because what we see, I think everybody knows I'm on the board of visitors at Barry, not the trustees, the big board, but the the board that they say thanks, but no thanks, but we'll put you on this board. But what we see is in the school itself. So you have these different deans of different departments, and you have the resources kind of being equally handed out. And really the business schools should be getting most of the resources, because they're the school where the ROI on alumni and people giving back. When you look at the donors, I don't see too many ag majors there. I don't see too many education majors there, right?
Yeah.
So maybe we should be charging more for one set and then a little less for other sets. So that's an idea that's being pushed around at a lot of different schools. My thing is students and sometimes parents don't understand the ROI on a college degree. They just think, get to go to college. And at Berry, we have a lot of first generation college students. And what's interesting to me now, Berry has a huge endowment. They're very generous with that endowment. So the what people are paying is a lot less than what the sticker price is. The last I checked, it was $29,000 a year average tuition, but I think the sticker price is over 60. Wow. So there's a lot of
that's really nice.
There's a lot of give there.
Yeah.
So what's interesting though is the fact. Hitting your computer there. Was the fact that when people go to take out loans, of all the disclosures that are in the student loans, none of it says this is what you are expected to make when you graduate.
That's so disappointing.
And there was a website, it's not there anymore, but there was a website where someone was trying to do that. They were saying this degree, this college, this is the region you'll probably live in. This is what you'll probably be making.
Wow.
So it's taking all the polls we see on what people get paid as professionals, is integrating that into cost, and say, this is what you should get on the other side. That should be the top piece of paper before you sign for a student loan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because we've all met people with $150,000 student loans from some school we never heard of.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and a lot of schools actually will do that for their college seniors after they've graduated.
Yeah, but it's too late.
Yes, but they'll post it online is what I'm saying.
Oh, what they're making.
Yes, like what their average graduate from this major, at this year was, 55,000.
But that should be before you sign for the student loan.
Definitely.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how you solve that problem. But there's a lot of interest in that. The schools have no incentive to do that whatsoever.
No, they just
want you to keep paying them money.
Bottoms and seats.
Right.
Yeah.
So anyway, but that does kind of fall into budget. What's the point of teaching your kids about being responsible? And then they
blow it out.
And they blow it out. And now they're stuck with a $1,500 a month student loan payment. And they're making $2,500 a month the first year they're employed, or $3,500 a month net.
Yeah. They start off in the hole, and it just, sets them back.
Someone asked me recently, is it better for me to go to Berry College or KSU? I'm not a big fan of KSU. We've interviewed a lot of people there. We've hired maybe one or two that I thought were rock stars, but I think Berry's a better education. But a education at KSU where there's no debt is way better than a Berry College education with debt.
With debt, yeah,
exactly.
Right. So you have to think about these things in the end.
Absolutely.
So, all right, guys, we've got. Speaking of college savings, we have a great episode 158. This is episode 210, episode 150 or 168. Everything you need to know about 529 plans. We also had a video here recently on the YouTube channel. Georgia will now mandate personal finance education in schools. I think that rolls out next year or at the tail end of this year. That was a Governor Kemp initiative. And we have some great blogs that we've also linked in our show notes to learn more about teaching your kids about money. Thanks, guys, for the conversation. And thank you for listening to today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about Wiser Wealth Management or want to schedule a consultation, meet one of our fiduciary financial advisors, you can do so by going to wiserinvestor.com. Click on the Schedule Now button to get on our calendar. We'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to a Wiser Retirement podcast. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're listening. That way you don't miss any new episodes. We'd also appreciate if you could leave a rating and review. If you have any questions about anything that was discussed today, head to wiserinvestor.com and reach out.
This episode was produced by Edward Resendez.
This podcast is strictly for informational purposes only and is not to be considered as investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell any financial products, securities, digital assets, or any other investment vehicles, or a basis to make any financial decisions. Wiser Wealth Management Incorporated is a registered investment advisor with the SEC. The host and/or guest may personally own securities, digital assets, or other investment vehicles mentioned on this podcast. Neither the host nor guest of the show are compensated for their participation, and no referral fees are paid to or received by any host or guest for clients, listeners, or similar interests. Investments involve risk, and unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor, tax professional, insurance professional, and/or legal professional before implementing any strategy discussed herein. Past performance is not indicative of future performance.